Planet of the Apes franchise has spanned 10 films with hundreds of scenes across them all, and many among them being beloved and iconic. While narrowing down the best of them all is far from an easy task, it's one that I thought would be a fun challenge to take on and give you all my top 10 favorite Planet of the Apes movie moments. If you like what I do here and want to show your support, be sure to hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on all things apes. Enjoy the video. And welcome to Ape Nation, your #1 source for all things Planet of the Apes on YouTube. My name is Josh, and today I am going to be counting down my personal top 10 favorite scenes from all 10 movies in the Planet of the Apes franchise. There were a lot of amazing and really memorable moments from all across the series to choose from when putting this list together. Seriously, I had like 40 something scenes listed that I had to whittle down and rank. It was a lot to go through, and it hurt me to not be able to include a good handful of them, but I think I've managed to put together a list that both is true to my personal tastes and favorites, and also does a really good job at representing the entire Planet of the Apes franchise. So with all of that said, let's kick this thing off with some honorable mentions. So I do have a good handful of honorable mentions here, and the first one I'm going to get to is the human hunt scene from the original 1968 Planet of the Apes. This is probably the most iconic moment, if not for one other moment that I will talk about later in this video. It has some of Jerry Goldsmith's best music work of his entire career. The tension is brilliant, and it builds up well to the first time we ever see the apes in the franchise, which is another moment within this moment that is one of my all-time favorites. Next up on the honorable mentions is another very iconic sequence, You Damn Dirty Apes. This is again an iconic sequence, and I'm talking about the entire scene leading up to that iconic line, the apes chasing Taylor throughout Ape City. This is both fun and filled with so much tension, and it ends with one of, again, the most iconic lines in the franchise, as well as just all of film history. It really hurt me not putting this one on the list, but it is still an honorable mention. Next up in honorable mentions is the ape uprising from Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. This is such a horrifying but satisfying sequence to watch. Outside of the very obvious fake blood throughout the scene, the extreme violence paired with the eerie music and the acting and the emotion of Caesar's journey is really incredibly effective, and it all builds up to one of the greatest Planet of the Apes moments ever, which again I will talk about later in this video. Next up is the ALZ virus spreading scene, aka the opening scene of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. This is a scene that not a lot of people talk about when it comes to all-time favorite moments from the franchise, but it's one of them for me, and I know really nothing happens outside of just exposition and some cool visuals, but this opening is so chilling and really well made, setting the tone for the rest of the movie. It's so dark, it's so dreary, and it sets the stage of where the world is at 10 years after Rise. And it also sets the precedent of visual storytelling that we get throughout Dawn and again throughout War. It's a great opening scene, and that is why it's an honorable mention. Next up is Koba kills the guards from Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. This is such a brilliantly executed sequence of tension from start to finish. It's one of the most iconic moments from Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and something I really love about it is that it finalizes in a way the transition of Koba into the film's villain. Up to that point, you're still worried about Koba, you're nervous about Koba, you're anxious about Koba, you feel for Koba, but in this moment, he finally takes it too far and officially becomes the villain of this story, and that is why it's an honorable mention on this list. Next up is Caesar versus Koba from Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and this is of course the final battle between the hero and villain of this story with Caesar and Koba. This is such an emotional battle that keeps you not wanting either character to die. So much intense, creative choreography throughout, and it's a perfect way to end the movie. I love the scene. It's a great fight scene, but there are 10 other scenes that I think are better, and so it is still an honorable mention. And the next honorable mention is Nova helping Caesar in War for the Planet of the Apes. This is such a beautifully made scene that I always look forward to every time I watch this movie, and it is one of the shining examples of great visual storytelling from Matt Reeves throughout this trilogy. It's driven purely by cinematography and Michael Giacchino's music and Andy Serkis and Amia Miller's acting, and I think it just also captures both the soul and beauty among the war and chaos of this entire movie. It's such a great scene, it's such a beautiful scene, such a powerful scene, and I love it very much, and that's why it's an honorable mention. Next up is May Speaks from Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And again, similar to the Charlton Heston speaking for the first time in the original Planet of the Apes, I'm talking really about the entire sequence of Silva chasing after May, Noah trying to protect her, her running through the grass, finally ending with this line from May. No! Speaking of that running through the grass, I think this scene is a perfect mix of homaging the original film with its music that sounds like Jerry Goldsmith and that chase through the tall grass, but also bringing in a new level of hyper intense action to the Apes franchise. And again, it all builds really effectively to May's first words. It's thrilling and I really enjoy it every time I watch it, and that's why it's an honorable mention. And finally, the last moment on the honorable mentions list is another scene from Kingdom, and that would be one of the last scenes from Kingdom, and that would be Noah and May's final conversation. This is a very quiet but complex and moving moment that elevated Kingdom even higher than it already was for me in its final moments. There's thought-provoking dialogue both from Noah and May that I think sets the stage for what could come next in a way that keeps you hooked the entire time on everything they have to say. It's a great scene, a great way to end the movie, and that is why it's an honorable mention. Moving on to the top 10 and getting started with number 10 is gonna be Maurice Says Goodbye to Caesar from War for the Planet of the Apes. This is a fantastic scene and a perfect final moment for both Caesar and Maurice at the end of this movie. Maurice finally being able to speak a full sentence feels so earned after the first two movies, and seeing him mostly speak in sign language or having a word here and there. And it also just brings such a tear to my eye every time when Maurice tells Caesar about how his son will know about his father, and Caesar looks out at all of his apes one more time before he finally dies.
And what Caesar did for us.
I couldn't think of a better way to end this trilogy or Caesar's story as a whole, and while there are 9 other scenes that I do love more than this one, this still comes very close to beating almost any of them, and so that is why it is number 10 on this list. Coming in at number 9, the shipyard finale from Escape from the Planet of the Apes. This is one of the saddest and most genuinely heartbreaking moments in the entire Planet of the Apes franchise. Eric Braeden's acting, I think, is excellent. He pulls off this natural spiral from his calm and relaxed demeanor that he has throughout the first half of the movie, with him now being almost completely unhinged and getting to a point where he's actually scary in this third act finale. Kim Hunter is also giving an incredible performance here. It's so emotionally crushing, and I both love and hate seeing her in a position of desperation as a mother. I love it because it gives Kim Hunter some really great acting material, but I hate it because I just love that character so much, and it kills me seeing her in that position. And what always gets me about this scene is that Cornelius and Zira's death feels inevitable, but Hasslein finding and chasing them, plus how much you care about them from the entire movie leading up to that point, it keeps me secretly hoping that they're gonna find a way out of this ending every single time I watch it, even though I know it's not gonna happen.
I want that baby. If you won't give it to me, I'll shoot.
It's a fantastic scene. It gets me emotional every single time, and I am always dreading but enjoying and being thrilled by it every time I watch Escape from the Planet of the Apes, and that is why it is number 9 on my list. Coming in at number 8, the apes attack the human city from Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. This scene, I think, is so fascinating and one of the more complex and intelligent action scenes that we've got from a movie in years. I think it is one of the best blockbuster sequences that we've gotten in the last decade or so. Something I love about it that I didn't even realize until recently is that it mirrors the Golden Gate Bridge scene that we have in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, but now the apes are the antagonizers and the villains of the sequence, and it reflects the apes being the ones in the wrong through its cinematography, through its camera work, through its music. There's just a much more slow-paced and artistic direction overall to the entire thing and how it's executed and how it's portrayed. It delivers both on incredible and really well assembled action while also being a very tragic, somber overall scene that has you thinking the entire time and dreading anyone doing anything to cause anyone harm. And also, it gave us the iconic image of a chimpanzee riding on a horse while dual wielding a pair of machine guns, and that is just awesome. And for that reason, and all the others I listed, this scene belongs at number 8 on my list. Number 7, Battle on the Golden Gate Bridge from Rise of the Planet of the Apes. While I will admit that I think the apes attacking the human city from Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is maybe a bit more creative, more artistic, and a bit more thought-provoking of an action scene, the Golden Gate Bridge battle is just so iconic and a bit more fun and a bit more emotional for me personally. And to me, it is the best action scene in the entire Planet of the Apes franchise. It's a fitting finale for Rise that takes the tight, lower-scale drama of the first 2/3 and gradually builds into this grand-scale, epic standoff between the apes and the police. And it cements Caesar as a great leader and a hero of a story that starts out as Will's. Patrick Doyle's music is emotional, it's intense, and it's so epic. It gets me every single time when I watch this movie, and there's just so many iconic bits that come from the sequence as a whole. Buck charging at the horse, Caesar riding on a horse for the first time, Buck's sacrifice at the end, Koba killing Jacobs. There's so many iconic moments within this larger sequence. It's just one of the most memorable moments in the entire Planet of the Apes franchise. It's an emotionally thrilling third act from start to finish, and that is why it is number 7 on this list. Coming in at number 6, Caesar and the Colonel from War for the Planet of the Apes.
You came here to kill me. Were you gonna show me mercy?
I showed you mercy when I spared your men.
Both Woody Harrelson and Andy Serkis give phenomenal performances in this entire scene. Woody Harrelson is just so chilling with his line delivery, and Andy Serkis is so heartbreaking with his range of emotions when he's going from feeling defeat to desperation to just complete and pure rage. And it's also one of the few moments of pure exposition in this entire movie that doesn't rely on that visual storytelling that Matt Reeves does so well with the rest of the movie, but it has such incredible dialogue that it really just makes up for it and makes it an incredibly memorable dialogue heavy scene. It's also incredibly effective to see Caesar brought to his lowest point and finally meet a villain that's able to break him and bringing him to that point in his life. And one other thing I really love is the music here. The music from Michael Giacchino is some of the best of his entire career. It's so eerie and it just drives the tragedy of the entire scene further. It's a heartbreaking scene, it's an emotional scene, it's a powerful scene, and that's why it's one of my favorites and why it is number 6 on this list. At number 5, we have Caesar revisits his childhood from Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. This is easily my favorite moment in the entire movie. Maybe it's cheating because it's just referring to something that we already know and love and are attached to from Rise, but I love the way that it does it. It's a perfect way to use you as an audience member's emotional connection to the first film and to Caesar and Will's relationship to create exposition for Malcolm, who doesn't know who Will is, who doesn't know the context, and who doesn't quite know exactly what's going on. This scene brings me nearly to tears every single time I watch the movie. Andy Serkis gets an opportunity to show a much different and much more vulnerable side of Caesar, and I think he does so beautifully throughout this scene of him just watching the video of Will and him when he was a younger ape. And I think it's also a very effective scene in further motivating and aiding Caesar before he takes on Koba at the end of the movie. It's a great scene. It's a really touching scene. It's one that I always look forward to and feel very emotional every time I watch this movie, and that is why it is number 5 on my list.
Who was that? On the video.
A good man. Like you.
Coming in at number 4, the Statue of Liberty from 1968's Planet of the Apes. I'm sure there are at least a few Planet of the Apes purists that will hop in the comments and say, how dare you have this at any place other than number 1, but for me, this is at number 4, but it's still a fantastic scene. It is one of the most iconic moments in the history of film. It's one of the greatest endings in the history of film. It's one of the greatest movie twists in the history of film. It's a perfect bow tie on the original film story. It's so well earned, and it fits like a glove as a shocking but really natural conclusion to the story. Charlton Heston's line delivery of "damn you all to hell" at the end as he falls down to the ground in the sand, it's so incredible. It's perfect in that moment, and it captures his worst fears being realized.
You maniacs! You blew it up! Oh, damn you! God damn you all to hell!
And something I also love about this moment is it brings all of the themes of the film full circle, talking about the fault of man and man being their own downfall and how a world like this could come to be, and him finally come to grips with that at the end. It's such an incredible moment. It's such an, again, iconic moment. I can totally understand why anyone would have this at their number 1. There was a part of me that felt like I almost needed to put this at number 1, but trusting my gut, I know there are 3 other moments that I appreciate in the franchise more than this one, but it's still one of the best, one of the all-time greats, and that is why it is at number 4. Coming in at number 3, Caesar's speech from Conquest of the Planet of the Apes.
Where there is fire, there is smoke. And in that smoke, from this day forward, my people will crouch and conspire and plot and plan for the inevitable day of man's downfall.
This is my single favorite speech ever given in a movie, ever. Roddy McDowall's performance, I think, is worthy of and should have been nominated for an Academy Award. He is outstanding in this entire sequence. His line delivery is on a whole other level. He is so good in this scene, and also the choice to have no music makes it so much better than had it used some big triumphant score in the background, and the dialogue heartbreakingly but beautifully captures the rage of the oppressed in a film that's speaking on the civil rights issues that were going on at the time it was released. This is a phenomenal scene. This is a phenomenal speech delivered with a phenomenal performance from Roddy McDowall. It is one of my all-time favorite moments, let alone Planet of the Apes, just in movies in general. It's an incredible sequence that is beyond words, but there are 2 more that I love even more, and that is why it is number 3 on my list. Coming in at number 2, Zaius and Taylor's conversation from 1968's Planet of the Apes. This scene is one that always has stuck with me, and I talk about it a bit in my review for the movie, but I think it epitomizes everything that I love about this franchise in one single scene. It dives deep into the film's critiques of humanity while also exploring the Planet of the Apes history and lore. There's no flash, there's no special effects, it's just 2 fantastic actors, one of them being in makeup, going back and forth with brilliantly written, thought-provoking dialogue.
How in hell did this upside-down civilization get started?
You may well call it upside down since you occupy its lowest level, and deservedly so.
My eyes are glued to the screen from start to finish, just completely mesmerized by these performances. And it also takes Zaius from being what I think is a pretty standard villain in the first half of the film to being a more understandable and much more human character, while also even further cementing himself as the villain of Taylor's story. It's a scene that has impacted me ever since I saw this movie when I was a teenager. It is so memorable. I can almost recite the entire sequence line for line. There's nothing really more to say about it. It's perfect in every single way. It's one of my favorite dialogue sequences ever put on film, if not my favorite. But there's just one other that I like more than this scene in the entire franchise, and that is why it is at number 2 on my list. And coming in at number 1 is a scene that most of you probably have predicted is number 1 by now, considering it didn't show up in the honorable mentions and it didn't show up in 10 through 2. And that scene would of course be from Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And it is the scene where Caesar says,
No!
This is one of the greatest movie theater moments I have ever experienced in my entire life. The scene itself is just perfect. It is so well done. The direction, the music, the build-up, the sound design, the line delivery from Andy Serkis are all an 11 out of 10. It takes a movie that up to that point was great, and it cemented it as one of the best of the franchise at the time. And it is one of the most satisfying and well-earned moments I have ever seen in a movie. Having to watch Caesar go through so much anguish and so much turmoil and not be able to say anything, not be able to fight back, not be able to argue, not be able to rail against his oppressor, and then finally acquiring something as powerful as speech and staring the person down who has made him feel like a slave, and he tells him no, and he just says it again and again and again, and he rallies his apes and he leads them to freedom. It's one of my favorite scenes in any movie ever. If I ever did a top 10 favorite movie scenes just overall, this would probably be on there, if not an honorable mention at least. Again, it is just a perfect scene to me. It has stuck with me ever since I saw this movie for the first time in 2011. It has only gotten better since then. I think this is one of the most iconic scenes of my entire generation of filmmaking, and my love for it knows absolutely no bounds, and that is why it is my number one favorite movie moment from the Planet of the Apes franchise. So guys, those were my top 10 favorite Planet of the Apes movie moments. Let me know what you thought of my picks. Do you mostly agree, mostly disagree? And if you disagree, let me know why. Either way, I want to know all of your thoughts, and I want to know what your top 10 favorite Planet of the Apes scenes are down in the comments below. Thank you so much for checking out today's video here on Ape Nation. If you liked this video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on all things apes. I'll catch you in the next one, so until then, goodbye.